Let's clear something up right now. If you ask the casual fan why Alex Eala won that match in Rome, they'll give you the easy answer. They'll point to the forehand, that whip-crack weapon that sent the ball skidding into corners like a startled animal. Or they'll mention the stamina, that almost mechanical ability to grind down opponents over 3 hours in the crushing Italian sun. But those people, the ones who just watch the ball and the winner count, they've missed the real story entirely. And the real story is deeply, profoundly unsettling. Think about it, a stadium, the Foro Italico, no less, packed with die-hard Italian tennis fans, generations of them, people who don't just watch clay court tennis but who have it running through their blood like a second circulatory system. These are fans who live for the slow burn rally, the sliding defensive pass, the grit of a five-set war. And yet, at the height of this match, they didn't roar, they didn't whistle or stamp their feet. They fell into a silence so thick you could feel it pressing against your eardrums through the television broadcast. Why? Because they felt betrayed. Betrayed by a game they thought they understood. Betrayed by a teenager from the Philippines who wasn't just winning, she was rewriting the rules of engagement right in front of them, and they were powerless to stop it. The opening minutes were exactly what everyone expected. The atmosphere was a living thing, electric and hostile, crackling with the certainty of a hometown victory. The veteran Italian, comfortable on this sacred red dirt, began to dictate. The crowd fed on every grunt, every slide, every error forced from the young visitor. Alex Eala looked, for the first few games, like she was simply trying to survive. Then somewhere in the middle of the second set, a subtle shift occurred. So subtle that the broadcast commentators, trained to watch the ball, completely missed the trigger. But if you knew where to look, not at the scoreboard but at the faces in the front row, you saw the exact millisecond the energy of the eternal city transformed. Hostility melted into confusion. Confusion curdled into a kind of haunting, reverent quiet. This wasn't a lucky break. This wasn't a momentum swing you could chart with a simple graph of winners and errors. This was something surgical. A calculated, almost cold-blooded display of a weapon the tennis world hasn't seen in decades. We're not talking about a serve that hit 130 miles per hour, not a return that painted the line. We're talking about a psychological dismantling so complete that a seasoned veteran, a player who knew every bounce and every shadow of that court, looked like a confused amateur playing in her own backyard for the very first time. Every single person in that stadium arrived expecting a masterclass in Italian tennis. They left wondering if they had just witnessed the birth of a new era, one where the old certainties no longer applied. So what did Alex Eala actually do? What gesture, what technical anomaly, what act of defiance broke every rule taught in the elite academies of Europe and left the most knowledgeable tennis fans on the planet questioning their own eyes? To answer that, you first have to understand the pressure cooker. You have to understand that Rome is not just another stop on the tour. The Foro Italico is a place where careers come to die. The red clay there isn't a surface, it's a graveyard for the unprepared. Rome is a city of ghosts and gladiators. Walking onto that court means walking into a history that demands nothing less than perfection. This is a WTA 1000 event, just one step below a Grand Slam. The ranking points are enormous. The prize money changes lives, and the pressure is a physical weight enough to crack the ribs of even the most steel-nerved veterans. But for Alex Eala, the stakes were even higher than points or money. She wasn't just playing for her own career. She was carrying 110 million people on her shoulders. The Philippines, a nation of islands and basketball courts, has been waiting for a tennis superstar for a generation. Every match she plays is broadcast across that archipelago, and whenever the ball clips the net, a collective breath of 110 million people simply stops. At 19 years old, most players are still trying to find the bathroom at the back of the players' lounge. They're fighting for wild cards and hopping to survive the first round without being embarrassed on a global stream. But Alex came from a different forge, the Rafael Nadal Academy in Spain. That place doesn't just teach tennis, it indoctrinates a specific set of values: suffering, resilience, an obsessive, almost spiritual relationship with the red clay. She has spent thousands of hours sliding on those surfaces, learning that the dirt is not your enemy but a partner in the struggle, a messy, unforgiving partner that will trip you the second you show disrespect. Yet even with that elite training, nothing can prepare you for the sheer, concentrated hostility of a Roman crowd when you are playing against one of their own. Italian fans don't watch tennis like they're at the opera. They participate. They whistle, a piercing sound designed to break your concentration right before your toss. They shout nonsense in your peripheral vision. They stamp their feet in rhythmic waves. They use every psychological trick in the book to get under your skin, to make you feel like an invader on sacred soil. So imagine the mental fortitude required. The suffocating Roman heat, the packed stands, thousands of people who actively want to see you fail. You're thousands of miles from home, you're young, you're the underdog, and every mistake you make is greeted with a roar of approval that shakes the clay dust off the lines. Most young players fold. Their feet get heavy on the slippery surface, their serves tight then wobble, their vision narrows as panic sets in. But Alex had a secret. She realized early that if she could survive this specific test, this cauldron of noise and expectation, she could survive anything the rest of the tour could throw at her. She was fighting a top-tier opponent and an entire stadium that had already written the script for her eventual respectful defeat. The statistics agreed with the script. Historically, young Asian players have struggled with the transition to the slow, heavy, exhausting courts of Europe. The movement is a different language, a dance of sliding, recovery, and infinite patience. Hit the ball too hard and the thick clay swallows the power like quicksand. Hit it too soft and you're a lamb sent to slaughter. It's a game of physical chess played at 100 miles per hour, and Alex was facing a veteran who knew every bounce, every shaded patch, every tricky edge of this surface. On paper, this was supposed to be a quick, painful lesson, but as the match progressed, the numbers began to lie. Alex's first serve win percentage started climbing. Her unforced errors dropped toward zero. The impossible began to feel against all logic inevitable. And it's that feeling watching someone overcome the impossible that makes us love sport. We've all been the underdog. We've all stood in a hostile room fighting against a crowd of doubters. And if you can see yourself in Alex's struggle, if you're rooting for her to break through that glass ceiling, then you're already part of this journey. So stay with me, because the tactical shift that actually broke the spirit of the Roman faithful is still coming. You could feel the energy changing through the television screen. The whistles were getting quieter. The murmurs were getting louder. People in the stands were actually looking at their tournament programs, double-checking the name of this girl who refused to miss a single shot. She was climbing back into the match point by point, but no one, not the commentators, not the veterans in the players' box, not the lifelong fans, was ready for the masterstroke she was about to unveil. Because to understand the genius of what happened next, you have to stop watching the ball. You have to look at the red dirt beneath her feet. The real battle was being won down there. The red clay of Rome is a deceptive, cruel surface. It looks soft, almost forgiving, but it is a grinding machine designed to expose every flaw in your technique. In the first set, Alex seemed to fall into the classic trap. She was playing too far back, camped well beyond the baseline, where the heavy Italian topspin had all the time in the world to kick up to shoulder height and push her even farther out of position. From that distance, every shot feels like you're climbing a mountain. You run twice as far as your opponent just to keep the ball in play. In the heat of a Roman afternoon, that's a fast road to physical collapse. The crowd saw this and they were satisfied. Typical, they thought, a defensive baseliner, she'll run out of gas soon enough. But as the match moved into the second set, the geometry of the court began to warp. Why did Alex suddenly decide to step 2 meters asterisk inside the baseline during the most high-stakes moments of the game? On clay, stepping forward means you're stealing your own reaction time. You're choosing to deal with a ball that's bouncing high and heavy right in your strike zone before it has a chance to lose its energy. It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy that usually only the top 5 players in the world can execute with any consistency. And yet here she was, a teenager from the Philippines, standing her ground against a barrage of shots that should have pushed her back to the fence. Every time her opponent hit a deep, heavy ball, Alex did the opposite of what instinct demanded. She didn't retreat. She moved asterisk forward asterisk. She was taking the ball on the rise, cutting off the angles and forcing the veteran to run side to side like a frantic shadow. Consider the long rally at 3-all in the second set, a grueling 24-shot exchange that had everyone on their feet. The Italian was hitting with massive spin, the kind of shots that usually force a defensive lob. But Alex was flattening her ground strokes, just enough to pierce through the heavy Roman air while still keeping the ball inside the lines. How can someone so young have that hand-eye coordination under such extreme pressure? The experts in the commentary booth were scrambling for cliches. They kept watching Alex's feet, waiting for a slip or a stumble that never came. Her sliding wasn't a way to stop, it was a way to accelerate into the next shot. And the longer the match went, the more precise her game became. She started hitting lines with the surgical accuracy of a 15-year veteran. Her opponent began to look across the net not with confidence, but with a growing, cold dread. Every winner she tried to hit came back with interest. Every drop shot was read perfectly. Alex's movement seemed to begin before the ball even left the strings. Have you ever seen a player who seems to be moving in slow motion while everyone else is rushing? That was the feeling sinking into the center court. The pace of the match was no longer being dictated by the veteran. It was being controlled by the girl from the Philippines. But here's the paradox. Just as she dominated the physical rallies, a new enemy emerged, one she couldn't outrun or outhit. In tennis, when you start playing too perfectly, you often hit a wall of mental fatigue. You start to realize how close you are to the finish line, and that's when the nerves invade. The pressure was building to a breaking point, and the crowd, now quiet but still hopping, was waiting for that one moment where the teenager would finally crack under the weight of her own ambition. The mystery was no longer about her technique. It was about her internal hardware. Is it possible for a human being to maintain this level of focus without one single mental error? The data analysts looked at her biometrics. Her heart rate was steady, her movement fluid, her eyes never leaving the ball. It didn't make sense. Yet the problem remained. She was playing against a crowd that was beginning to realize their favorite was losing. The atmosphere was turning toxic, the noise level rising towards something that could shatter the concentration of a statue. As she prepared to serve for the set, the entire stadium seemed to lean in, holding a collective breath, waiting for the inevitable collapse. The situation had become so tense that the air itself felt drained of oxygen. And for the first time in the match, Alex looked like she might finally be out of answers. But stop right there, because if you think this was just about a teenager having a good day, you've missed the entire point. Everyone assumes she won because she was faster, younger, or more determined. That's a surface observation that ignores the psychological heist she was actually pulling off. The real twist, she was never playing the tennis match everyone else was watching. While the crowd tried to break her spirit with whistles and shouts, Alex was using that noise as a trigger, a metronome. Most players see a hostile stadium as a threat. She saw it as a tool. She was timing her breathing to the rhythm of their boos. She was turning their negative energy into her own personal fuel cell. This wasn't just tennis, it was emotional alchemy. And the assumptions we make about young players from the Philippines, or from any emerging tennis nation, are usually rooted in a certain condescension. We expect them to be gritty, we expect them to be hard workers, but we rarely expect them to be the smartest person in the room. And that's exactly where Italy got it wrong. They thought they were dealing with a fighter. They were actually dealing with a grandmaster who had already seen 20 moves ahead. At the most critical juncture of the match, when any other player would have played it safe and hit a deep ball down the middle, Alex did the unthinkable. She hit a drop shot, but not just any drop shot. This one was so delicate, so perfectly disguised, so incredibly risky that it felt like a slap in the face to the entire Italian tennis tradition. It was a move that said without a single word, "I am not here to survive you, I am here to outclass you." That single shot was the moment she stopped being the girl from the Philippines who was just happy to be at the Foro Italico and became the predator that the WTA Tour has been dreading. It was a direct reflection of her academy's philosophy: suffer to succeed, but with her own venomous addition. Suffer with a smile on your face and a dagger in your hand. She didn't just win a point, she reconditioned the entire stadium. The fans who had been shouting against her suddenly realized they were witnessing a level of poise that usually takes a lifetime to develop. They weren't looking at a teenager anymore. They were looking at a professional who had completely mastered the art of the psychological flip. She turned the crowd into a silent witness to their own defeat. That drop shot was a statement of intent. It told her opponent that no matter how hard she fought, no matter how loud the crowd roared, Alex was holding the keys to the kingdom. The silence that followed was the loudest thing in Rome. It was the sound of 1,000 assumptions being shattered at once. But a single moment of brilliance is just a highlight. To prove this was no fluke, we need the cold, hard evidence that the broadcast cameras didn't show. The numbers from that second set reveal a transformation that's almost impossible to explain as luck. Alex won 78% of her first serve points. The tour average is closer to 60%. She wasn't just putting the ball in play, she was dictating exactly where the point would end before her opponent could even move her feet. Compare the heat map of her movement from Rome to her matches just a month earlier. A month ago, she spent most of her time 5 feet behind the baseline. In Rome, tracking data shows she stood practically on the line for over 70% of the rallies. That change in court positioning gave her a 15% increase in short ball opportunities. She wasn't waiting for the ball to come to her, she was taking the fight to the ball. The veteran Italian was forced to run 20% more distance than Alex in every single game. Even the top defensive legends rely on their sliding skills to win on clay, but Alex was producing offensive numbers that rivaled the best in the world. She hit 22 winners in that second set alone. Her opponent managed only 9. The veteran was being outplayed in every category that matters, and the tracking technology confirms the final brutal detail. The speed of Alex's ground strokes increased by an average of 8 miles per hour in the final 3 games. Most players slow down when nervous. They hit shorter balls, safer balls. Alex did the exact opposite. She accelerated. She was playing with a level of freedom that only comes when you have total, unshakable confidence in your system. After match point, there was one small detail the television cameras almost missed. Alex didn't just celebrate with her team. She walked over to the ball boy, a kid who had been standing in the sun for 2 hours melting, and handed him her wristband with a genuine smile. A gesture of humility that reveals the character behind the technique. All these numbers, all these moments point to a single conclusion: this victory was not an accident. It was the result of a new blueprint for success that Alex had been building in secret at the academy. Everything is becoming clear. The world of tennis is finally seeing what happens when elite talent meets a revolutionary strategy. So what did Alex Eala actually do in Rome that changed everything? She proved that you don't need to be from a traditional tennis powerhouse to own the red clay. She showed that a teenager from the Philippines can walk into the lion's den of the Foro Italico and walk out holding the crown. It wasn't just about the points or the prize money. It was about the moment the world realized that the gap between the legends and the next generation has finally closed. Alex did not just win a match. She won the respect of a city that prides itself on never being impressed. This victory stripped away the idea that geography defines destiny. When you look at the way she handled the heat, the pressure, and the hostility, you realize we are looking at something far bigger than a single victory. This was a message sent directly to the rest of the tour. The kid is not a kid anymore. She is a strategist, a gladiator, and a symbol of what is possible when you refuse to let your environment dictate your potential. The crowd in Rome arrived expecting to see a local hero dominate. They left talking about the girl with the iron will from a nation of 110 million people who suddenly believe in tennis again. As she moves closer to the grand stage of Paris, the question is no longer if she can compete with the best. The question is how long until she beats them all. If Alex can do this in the suffocating pressure of Rome, she can do it anywhere. She has shattered the glass ceiling for an entire nation and redefined what it means to be a champion in the modern era. This is a story of a young woman who looked at the impossible and decided it was just another hurdle to slide past. The road ahead is long, and the red clay of the French Open will be even more demanding. But after what we saw in Italy, would you really bet against her? This is more than a sports story. It's a movement that is only just beginning for every fan who has ever felt like an outsider. The real mystery now is how high the ceiling actually goes. Is she destined for the top 10 by the end of the year? Or are we looking at a future world number one in the making? The only thing certain is that we are tracking every serve, every tactical shift as this history unfolds, and you don't want to be the one who missed the moment it all clicked into place. Do you think she can win a Grand Slam before she turns 21? The next chapter in this incredible journey is already being written.